All right, let's change gears a little bit and hit some state politics. Some of my favorite things to talk about. It's a new year. There's a new agenda in Lansing. Plus, the Michigan Republican Party is having a bit of a crisis of leadership. The GOP members, some of them, are looking to oust GOP Chair Christina Caramo. There is a lot to talk about, so let's get to it with Jonathan Osting, Capitol reporter for Bridge, Michigan. Happy New Year, Jonathan. It's good to see you.
Hi, Christy. Happy New Year to you as well.
Yeah, the political agenda in Michigan is never boring, especially moving into an election year here in 24. But let's go ahead and take a look here at the GOP infighting in the state and what's coming up on Saturday. There's a special meeting happening in Commerce Township with the state committee. Tell us why Caramo is under fire now. What has changed in the last couple of months that now members are saying she's got to go?
Well, it's been a slow burn, really. Caramo took office about 11 months ago now with a promise to sort of redo fundraising for the state party. It had traditionally relied on some big donors. She promised to woo small dollar donors and build up fundraising in that fashion. And frankly, she just hasn't done so. It's been a real struggle to raise money for the party, and those struggles have only been magnified as time wears on. Further, she's injected herself into some local party disputes that's alienated some of the grassroots supporters who really helped propel her to this chair position in the first place. So it's a culmination of those things. It's been building for a while, but it appears likely to come to a head this weekend.
Yeah, and when you have a Senate seat in play and you have a lot of important, offices here in 24, money is key and that kind of fundraising. So tell us, Jonathan, then what's the process to remove her, especially if her critics and herself doesn't even believe that this process is legit?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately this dispute is going to end up in court. There is a group of state committee members meeting on Saturday and if they get enough members, so half of the state committee to have a quorum, they will hold a vote to remove Christina Caramo. She, however, says this is illegal, that the meeting wasn't properly called. I assume this is going to end up in court, some sort of a litigation, asking a judge to decide who took the proper steps in calling a meeting and who is actually going to be chair, or whether Caramo, anyways, will remain chair of the Michigan GOP heading into, as you mentioned, a really, really important election cycle for the party.
Yeah, as long as there have been politics, there has been infighting. But can you give us some perspective of where this stands in Michigan GOP history? Has this happened before?
I'm sure there's been dissension, but yeah, I mean, in my time covering state politics anyways, this is definitely new ground. I mean, this is not your traditional establishment versus grassroots fight, which you've seen in the GOP for a number of years. This is actually grassroots versus grassroots for the most part. It's, supporters of Caramo, but also other grassroots people who came into this party at the same time, mostly energized by former President Donald Trump, who brought a new wave of political energy to the party. But it's factions internally that are warring, not necessarily the old guard versus the new.
Yeah, and again, in an election year, you need the cohesion. Okay, let's look down the line. If for some reason you say that this could end up in court, if she is removed, who steps in, or what's the interim process?
Well, under party bylaws, the co-chair, that's Melinda Pego, a woman from the Muskegon area, would temporarily become chair until the Michigan GOP state committee selects a replacement. Now, the state committee, some of whom are meeting this weekend, that's like the diehards of the internal party machine. It's folks who were elected as precinct delegates, but then their peers chose them to actually represent their region on the state committee. It's about 100 people, and they need 50 or so of those people together this weekend and able to pull off this ouster attempt.
All right, let's go ahead and talk agenda for 24 in Lansing. What are you watching for?
Well, I think it's going to be a really interesting year to see whether Democrats are able to continue the pretty aggressive legislating they did last year. So recall it was the first time in 4 decades that Democrats had full control of the legislature and the governor's office. Well, there's a new wrinkle this year. The Democrats lost their voting majority in the state house when 2 members won their mayoral races in Warren and Westland, respectively. So to start the year anyways, Democrats, if they want to get much done, and this includes Governor Whitmer, are going to have to work with Republicans if they want to actually pass any new laws. They're going to need at least some Republican support in the House. So I think that really changes the tenor. I assume not as much will happen in Lansing. It was a pretty breakneck pace last year with Democrats sort of addressing pent-up demands that they had for 4 decades, as they put it. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out, whether in this era of, partisanship, we can actually see some cooperation across the aisle.
Aha, and wouldn't that be nice? All right, so lawmakers head back next week. So how does that change your workflow, Jonathan?
Well, it's been frankly kind of nice to not have them in session for the last month and a half. I've been able to dig into some other, things. The legislature takes up a lot of your time when they're really working fast. They can do a lot, and they did last year. So I think it's going to be a little slower pace to start the year and more time to dig into stuff like the presidential primary, which is coming up just in February, and the Michigan GOP is holding a caucus and convention as well in early March that will decide a lot of the state's delegates to the national convention for deciding whether Trump or someone else is the party's nominee next year.
All right. We know
this
that you're
year,
going to be,
sorry.
Yeah, I know that you are going to be working hard, and we'll have you back on. Really appreciate it. Great work that Jonathan Osting always does for Bridge, Michigan. He's a Capitol reporter there. You can read him at bridgemi.com. All right. Thanks so much, Jonathan. It's good to see you.
Thank you.